Hello everyone, this is Surf, and today we are talking about the transportation overhaul that has taken place not so recently on Stoneworks. I'm referring to the disabling of the teleportation systems and the new road systems that give you boosts in speed depending on how the road is built. Now, I almost didn't make this video just because the transportation overhaul happened quite a bit ago, but I found the outline for it in my school notes, and so I decided, what the heck, there are some points in here that people haven't really been, that I haven't seen around, and so I think people could learn from that. So, we got three categories today: new transportation changes, problems therein, and the new meta. So without further ado, let's dive on in. And so they disabled the TPs, right? What are we going to see? What have we seen now? We don't have to speculate. This is sort of what we're dealing with in the world of Rathnir and Eldham Stoneworks as a whole. And this includes the uptick in the horse economy. Now, since you don't actually have to teleport anywhere, horses are the new thing. Now, before, horses were a short to medium range traveling medium. Like if you wanted to travel across your nation, but you didn't want to use the Nether, you'd have your horse, and there'd be a couple. Horse breeders were semi-rare. If you were a big nation, you had them, but medium to small nations, maybe not so much. You'd have to go to a neighbor if you were looking for a horse. Another thing is it limits international operations. The UNE, the United Nations of Eldham, was a sort of a victim of this. A lot of people came from all over Eldham to build the library. However, after they disabled the transportation system, it became a mountain harder to try to get over there and help your fellow man. Now, that would have been less of a problem if they had figured out a Nether highway sort of system, and not to say they haven't, but it wasn't very well publicized. And now, that may not be such a bad thing. You know, it really localizes the stuff that happens. And if you really want to get something about a global event in the ears of people, you can go through the global discords. But if you're just playing a server pretty much casually, only minding stuff within your nation, the world has sort of closed off. The world has become a lot bigger in terms of psychology. It's hard to get from place to place. You've got to walk it. Or you've got to take a horse, or try to navigate the Nether, depending on the quality of the Nether highway near you. Another thing here is that roads actually now have much more pronounced of a purpose. Because back before they disabled the teleports, it cost maybe about $1,000 to get from place to place to place. And so it was a convenience thing. It was like a thrifty thing if you actually wanted to walk the whole place. But now roads are much more important, and they're incentivized since they give you speed boosts depending on the quality of how you build it, and I'll talk about how you build it in a minute. But now it's taken a whole new life of its own. Roads have always been a thing, connecting up empires, but it's always been more aesthetic than functional. It's for people who don't have the cash to teleport around and around, or just for people who want a more immersive experience to actually have to walk and put in the effort. However, now it's essential. Now, if you want your players to get around, if you want them to see everything your nation has to offer or anything the world has to offer, the roads are going to have to be a quality experience. So let's talk about these new road variants. These new road variants that will improve your speed greatly when you are traveling across the world. The first of these is your basic path block, your grass path block. You right click on a grass and it becomes a path, and that'll give you 25% increase to base movement speed. Secondly, in the mid tier, you have a redstone block followed by cobblestone followed by any block of your choice. It can be netherrack, it can be anything, absolutely anything. Except one exception, which I will get to after I talk about all three. So, redstone block, cobblestone, anything of your choice for a 50% increase in base movement speed. Lastly, redstone, smooth stone, and anything. So smooth stone is you put cobble in a smelter, it becomes stone. You put it in the furnace again, and it becomes smooth stone. So twice smelted cobblestone, and then any block of your choice to give you a 75% increase in base movement speed. However, the exception I was referring to, I've been talking about, is the path block. You cannot put a path block at the top of your improved roads. If you do that, it'll just become the 25% and cancel out what is under that. I learned that through experience, so maybe you won't experience the same problem. And let me tell you, the transportation system, we've seen it already, but I think we're finally coming up on the up and up. It's going to get worse before it gets better. This observation would have been most astute as soon as the changes came out, but we're sort of dealing with the aftermath nowadays because I am a procrastinator. So, the entire transportation, the road systems of your nations are going to get worse before they get better because they're going to be uprooting a lot of stuff. They're going to be remaking their roads. And there's been a lot of variation in the way roads are made, of course. It all depends on your artistic preference. Now, there are some very ornate, very fancy, very realistic looking roads around Stoneworks with, like, you got some gravel here, you got some cobble here, you got some grass here, you got some path block here, and those are going to be a trial and a half just to redo to try to get your max speed going on, particularly if it's over long distances. If you made roads like that and then had to deal with the new transportation overhaul, my heart goes out to you because that's a challenge right there. Now we're going to be looking at what we've seen since the overhaul has taken place, and that is less reliance on the Nether. A lot less people are using the Nether to get around and just mining it. If you're going into the Nether nowadays, you probably aren't traveling short, medium to long distances. If you want to go across the entire planet, if you want to go from like Plagatea to Simulami, you're probably going to want to use the Nether. However, most people aren't using the Nether simply for means of travel nowadays. They're mining it out, and the roads have become much more of an experience now that you can reliably and more efficiently get across it over long distances. People like it better. It's more immersive than sitting in a 2x2 or 1x2 tunnel and sprinting for like 15 minutes. Now there's scenery, and it's much more of a breeze. You know how it is. We have also seen a large increase in sea trade, in people endeavoring to make their money through overseas trade via boats and selling goods there. Now, I personally love to see that, and we've got more of a balance now between those who are earnestly trying to make a living through traveling the seas and selling wares and other stuff to in reference to the pirates. Now, shout out to Tortuga. Mostly, before the transportation overhaul, the main people that were sort of utilizing the sea for practical and aesthetic purposes were pirate nations. But now, a lot more people are using it as means of transport and trade. And that also sort of helps the old pirate culture. Now, the pirates are going to be dealing with a much more populated sea, and people who are worried about pirates are going to have to take precaution in order to attempt to get around it. So I love to see that. Last thing before we talk about the problems is the use of speed potions. You get yourself on a quality road going 75%, nearly double the average speed. You pop a speed potion, you're across the world, you're going light speed absolutely instantly. The speed potion industry, at least in my neck of the woods, has expanded greatly since the transportation overhaul, and I think it's really, really fun, particularly if you've got long straightaways. I know that's typically not very aesthetically pleasing, particularly if you don't like that sort of thing. Usually people like to wind and curve their roads, particularly to get around ecological, geographical barriers. However, if you've got a big straightaway, if you fancy tunnels, Pop a speed potion, get one side of your nation to the other, lickety split. It's fantastic. I highly recommend trying that if you have not already. Find yourself a big old straightaway road, pop a speed potion, and see how fast you can go on these new roads. Now looking at the problems therein with this new system. We've got this new system, and what problems have we been seeing? What problems are we going to see in the future? The first of this, obviously, is looting. And fortunately, you can't get a lot of money for redstone. Due to server TPS most of the time, redstone contraptions don't work, period. Also, you can't sell them at the spawn store. The real, I guess, high-ticket item, you could say, is their aesthetic value. Just having their stuff around your place, making you look richer than you might otherwise be. Also, the smooth stone works for building materials if you like that one as well. However, you can get the staff to help you with this, I believe. If you go up to them, if you make sure you're doing your maintenance and making sure all your roads are going good every once in a while to make sure nobody stole the whole thing, you'll be good. But if that ever happens, you can call on staff, I believe, and tell them someone griefed your road, and they'll get it back for you. Another thing to really watch out for is the explosion in bandit/pirate culture. Now there's going to be less people teleporting, less people using the Nether, and more people just on the roadsides trying to get from place to place. This is a perfect storm for people who, like aspiring bandits and bandits already, to take advantage of a new system, a new attempt at immersion, and harassing those who are trying to mind their own business, making a living, wandering the roadside. I've seen this happen a lot, particularly with bandits that I know, is they've got a lot more people walking around now and traveling in methods that make them vulnerable to bandit attacks, ways that haven't been possible in the past. Now, when you're teleporting, there's no way some bandit's gonna intercept you unless he's like already in the city. And if you're using the Nether sort of entrances and exits in the overworld are heavily secured, so you can't open the gates or open the doors unless you're a citizen there already. So now that you have got everybody walking on the road, you've got a lot more people potentially coming into contact with bandits. And another major problem for this is shops. A lot of people had to sort of basically remake their shop in order for it to get any attention from the outside world. Before the transportation overhaul, you could transport yourself to a place, you could teleport to a place, and typically sometimes the place you teleported would be the shop of the nation. I know the capital of Drukyal used to do this. I don't know if they still do. They might still do. I haven't checked. But you TP to the city, and where you would find yourself is in the city's main general store. However, you can't do this anymore. So what you're going to have to do, what people have done, is move their shops to the very outskirts of the city, beyond the walls, either connected to the walls themselves or in their own separate physical building, because you can't get inside the cities anymore, or you really can't anyway. And the only way you're going to be able to attract outside customers from outside the city is making it accessible from outside the walls, or like a little dugout where they can get in without having to use anything that would require them to have permissions. So moving on to the last category here, the new meta. How are we going to thrive in this new system that has been created? And the first thing is the what I'm calling the gift shop method. This goes hand in hand with the last thing I talked about, and this is making your shop available from the roadside or connected to your city in such a fashion that people who do not have perms can access the shop safely without getting access to the entire city, without being able to free roam if you prefer your security and your walls. Another thing this is going to do with the not having teleportation and the waning popularity of the Nether is localization of shops is going to be a massive deal. Having a shop that sells building materials or sells food or sells horses etc. Having local supply is so much more important than it ever was before. Another thing is citizen-only transport. Now, how do you make sure that your citizens of your nation can get from one city to the other without being harassed by bandits or walking long distance? How do you maximize efficiency of transportation around your nation without with the least amount of harassment possible? And I've got a couple things. And since you can't teleport, you're not going to be able to zoom everywhere you want to go. You can have claimed tunnels. This is one of the things. It's kind of money inefficient. If you're trying to be thrifty, I've got another option for you. But the first option here is claimed tunnels. Now, it's just one chunk by one chunk, sort of just straightaways. They can be above ground, they can be below ground, or they can be like sky tunnels. It doesn't matter, just as long as they're claimed from one end to the other, so nobody else can get in there, and you guys can like meet in the middle. The two cities tunneling systems can meet in the middle, and everyone's hunky-dory and good. Another thing is low-level underground sort of systems. So you build a tunnel from your city to your friend's city at about maybe 10 to 20 blocks below the surface, a point where caves are going to be relatively few, and people strip mining or branch mining or just trying to collect resources aren't going to find it on the first try. Something that's a Y level that is seldom mined at. And the third is, well, obviously the Nether. If you really want to use the Nether, it's always going to be there for you for your transportation needs. That's sort of what the point of the Nether was in the first place, how you could travel long distances over the Nether and get to an overworld location that was much farther away. And the last thing I have for you is the independent roadside shops. Now, this localization, this fierce localization that we've begun to see, opens the opportunity for unaffiliated players to make a lot of money. You don't have to engage in a large endeavor through your nation. You can just have a house. You can be a squatter if you wanted to. Set up near a road. It's just your house. And put out stuff on the roadside. Put out produce or basic building materials, like different varieties of wood. You can put out alcohol. You can put out whatever. There's an alcohol add-on if you didn't know. I'm sure everyone knows. But shops on the road, people traveling, maybe they need food, maybe they were on the way to get wood or something, and they've just found a roadside shop that has it all, probably for pretty cheap. If I were you, I'd make it really, really cheap, just to make sure you can maximize your business. And trade companies as well. You typically don't see trade companies outside the purview of a specific nation, even if they try to hide it a little bit. Usually trading companies are through a particular nation or started by a particular nation. But now there's more incentive to have a completely independent system going on, to where a trade company can operate completely within its own purview and independence. And people who engage in that are people who are sort of entrepreneurial in nature, can make a ton of money from this new transportation system. But that's all I have for you today. Tell me how you've been faring in the new transportation system. Tell me what you've discovered, what you found out, what works best for you. Discuss it in the comments. But before I leave you, tell your friends, subscribe to the video, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I will be back with more Stoneworks content very, very soon. I'm now out of school. I got free time. We're making videos. Let's go!